Okay, cell phones on silent or off? And I hereby call this town meeting to order. Just before we start, the chairman of the Board of Selectmen, Ed, is going to make a presentation.
Okay, as you all know, each year we dedicate the town book to a deserving person. Hatfield is always a village that raises a child. And this year, it was hard. There's always a great selection of people to pick from that have done many things for the town of Hatfield. So I'm going to move on with who we dedicated this to. I know the suspense is there. Who is this person? Okay. We've decided to dedicate this to a person that not only served his country, but has served his town. Have you figured it out yet? The Select Board is pleased to recognize, so let me put my glasses on, okay. The Select Board is pleased to recognize an individual who exemplifies the definition of leadership, Marcus Jeff Boyle. Couple footnotes. Okay, son of a tobacco farmer and his mother a nurse, Jeff began working on a tobacco farm as early as age 9. After attending Hatfield schools, he went on to the Deerfield Academy and completed his undergraduate studies at the University of Massachusetts. Jeff obtained his master's degree in business administration from the University of Central Florida. In 1967, Jeff began a career in the U.S. Air Force, retiring as a colonel in 1995. In 1995, he worked for the Defense Intelligence, retiring in 2006 as a member of the Defense Intelligence Senior Executive Service. After 18 moves during his career with his wife, daughter, and son, Jeff and Lori returned to Hatfield in 2006. In 2007, Jeff made a bid for Select Board for 10 consecutive years. Thank you, Jeff.
Thank you, Ed. What a proud honor. We're all very proud of you, Jeff. So welcome and thank you for coming. I'm Joe LaValle, your town moderator, for some of the new people that don't know me. So here we are again. My God, how time flies. I hope you all had a really nice Mother's Day, even with the rain, but good thing moms are tough and flexible. These past few years, we've lost so many long-time, very special townspeople that contributed to help this place what it is today. We're always saddened with loss, but also know that there are many young, committed families and individuals joining our town who also want to keep it safe and special. I have to believe that it's because we try to keep our way of life much more simple and enjoyable. So always work to protect who we are for you, your children, and your grandchildren, something I often hear from so many. This process of open town meeting, one of the oldest in the country, is such a privilege to participate in. My goal and promise to you is to always do my very best. At the last special town meeting, I spoke of communication and the lack of it. Not by choice, but everyone's lives are so busy, and the world of news has turned off many from getting the paper, combined with the negativity of social media. We really need to find ways to reconnect and communicate. At town events like these meetings, or issues that will and do affect each of us, whether through rules, laws, or taxes, how do we inform you or share your ideas back? It should be much less complicated than one would think. We just need helpful ideas. Education and communication, not separation. After all, we're a town with approximately 2,400 registered voters. We should be able to have communication two ways. It should be much less complicated than one would think. We just need the ideas. Just as an aside, the YouTube taping of the candidate statement this year that John Novak puts on, there are 300 views already. Check out YouTube in Hatfield. It's the same thing you'll see on Channel 15, but you can catch it way easier on your own schedule. Always remember that change is constant. However, when it happens slowly, we can adjust more easily, so as not to make some mistakes that can affect so many. If done slowly and carefully, correcting as we go is much more gentle on all of us. We see many agencies or programs that just make a rapid change, and many of us say, what were they thinking? So sometimes, holding off an issue for more discussion or education can avoid huge regrets. Again, educate, don't separate. So with that said, again, if you're not a registered voter, you really need to sit toward the bleachers or on the sides, so as when there's a reason to count, there's no confusion. Unless there's some difficulty, please do your best to sit on the sidelines. This is our gym. And this is an open meeting for the voters who wish to participate in this process. So thank you for that. Each year I point out that we'll move along in a respectful manner due to reaching 10 o'clock. It's late for those with young children at home and our seniors. God, I understand this more every year myself. If we have a long way to go, we will have to reconvene on another night to finish, and I know most here would rather not do that. As Newtown members remind me, it's easy for us to assume that we know who's up here tonight. So if I can take a moment to introduce some that help our town operate daily. They are on the Board of Selectmen, Ed Jaworski, Cindy Doty, and Brian Moriarty. On the Finance Committee, Darrell Williams, Betsy Ryder, Paul Fisher, Diane Brzezowski, and Sean Barry. The Town Administrator, Marlene Myshansky. The Town Clerk, Lydia Zish, and her assistant, Elena Wilcox. School Superintendent, John Robert. Where are you, John? Okay, up there. That's right, you're not a registered voter. Town Collector and Treasurer, Edwina Pellisano, and Assistant Town Collector and Treasurer, Sharon Strigowski. And of course, we have the DPW Director, Phil Genovese. Now, I'd like to point out that a lot of careful consideration, time, and input is spent on these articles presented tonight for your consideration, taken by some quite dedicated people during a lot of posted meetings all year leading up to tonight. These meetings serve to explain and discuss the details, ideas, and issues, and help each board craft a proposed article to present to townspeople as a whole their articles to either vote for or against tonight. With that said, I ask all here to be mindful of why we're here. Not to delve into such details that have already been discussed at great length, but to consider whether we as a town approve or not each article as it's presented to the best of our abilities, with some discussion that helps explain a little bit more, or to raise some new information that came about since those meetings that are new to the article. This is out of respect for all of you that did attend the many meetings held during the year, yet not to be rude to anyone else. Now, I will say there are some that missed or didn't attend these meetings during the year, yet wish to try to rewrite or amend these articles in their final form at the last minute. This is where much time can be consumed, and you need to be aware of this. At times, it is certainly welcome and necessary, while at others, resulting in either poor outcomes, as we have seen in recent years, or resulting in getting so complicated that common sense has returned us back to the original article. I'm very generous in allowing most amendments, but as I attend programs with other moderators, due to the actions of a few, I'm much tighter to the process and the rule of law. In no way do we ever mean to show any disrespect to this process or to anyone, but rather to respect your time and patience. If we seem to be going off into specifics that have already been discussed, I'll politely close off and go on to the next question. Otherwise, we'll be here for more nights than any of you have the patience to sit through. I also ask department heads and committees, if there's no inquiries, please try to refrain from giving a very detailed explanation as it's already been done. There is in no way meant to be rude, condescending, but rather to allow the process to move forward. If there are no questions to the article, obviously you did your homework and you educated the townspeople during the year of your very important article. As moderator for just over 17 years now, I do thank you for your trust, and I hope to never let up on my commitment to all of you in this very special place called Hatfield. We love this town, all of us, so get involved and help keep it safe and protected. Thank you. Thank you. Okay, you guys want to start?
Mr. Moderator,
Mr. Jaworski.
I move we take up Article 2.
Go ahead. He's got something to clear up because there's some issues. Go.
Sorry.
Wait. Town clerk takes precedent over you.
Yes, she does.
Now we know who's most important.
If anybody has trouble hearing, just raise your hand and
I just want to make this clear because it is a little bit confusing. The booklet that was in your handouts that you picked up, that's a copy of the town warrant, which has been posted for the last week, giving you an idea of what was going to be discussed tonight. The motions, it says at the top, motions, this is what the selectmen are going to be reading from and making the motion. So and it's a little more detailed, it may have some numbers in it that weren't in the warrant. So I just wanted to make sure you understood the difference between the two, and if you're following along as we're going through all the articles, I would be following the motion, because they may say something like, as presented in your handout, when they're not going to read something that's 3 pages long. So it's this bigger one that you want to be following. Thank you.
Okay, Darrell? Darrell, you're on.
Good evening. Welcome to town meeting. I just wanted to take a few minutes to talk a little bit about the finances of the town. I wanted to, first of all, thank my fellow members of the Finance Committee, the Board of Selectmen, Marlene, and all the department heads that worked hard all year on putting a budget together. We got some news late this afternoon. So we're very confident in our numbers. We're confident in the budget. We're confident we're using a free cash number of $404,000. And we fully anticipated by tonight that the state would have certified that number, and then so we can go forward. Unfortunately, we did not hear that news from the state. We're not sure why they haven't told us. We are confident in our numbers. The state hasn't told us anything's wrong, but the prudent thing for us to do, we feel, is to table many of the financial articles, including the budget, until we get confirmation from the state about our free cash number. And I'm sorry about that. It'll mean that we will have to reconvene at a town meeting in June sometime, but we feel it's the prudent thing to do.
Mm-hmm. And I know Marlene's been checking her phone today about every 5 minutes waiting for the state, and there's been no response. And they spoke out back very, very honestly about they can't ask you to approve money articles when they don't have the final number from the state. So it might be a very short night because of that, and then we're going to have to ask everybody to come back before the end of June when the year is up, because we have to have a budget to deal with these articles. So Brian, do you want me to start? Or whoever starts.
Mr. Moderator,
Mr. Jaworski.
I move we take up Article 2.
Second.
Motion been made and seconded to take up Article 2 in your handout.
I move that the town vote to authorize the Board of Selectmen to apply for, accept, and expend without appropriation any state or federal grants and gifts and awards from any public or private source that become available in fiscal year 2020.
Second.
Motion's been made and seconded in Article 2. Is there any discussion? These first few, for anybody that's new, these first couple are just some state things that we have to okay to go through to exist as a town. So if there's no discussion, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, nay. Motion carries.
Mr. Moderator,
Mr. Moriarty.
I move we take up Article 3.
I second.
Motion's made and seconded to take up Article 3 is in your handout.
Mr. Moderator,
Mr. Moriarty.
I move that the town vote to authorize its treasurer to enter into a compensating balance agreement or agreements for fiscal year 2020 pursuant to Chapter 44, Section 53F of the general laws.
You've heard Article 3 as read. Is there any discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed, nay. Motion carries.
Mr. Moderator.
Ms. Doty.
Mr. Moderator, I move that we take up Article 4.
Second.
Motion is made and seconded to take up Article 4 is in your handout.
Mr. Moderator, I move that the town vote to appropriate $242,801 from the town's transportation bond issue apportionment and to authorize the Board of Selectmen to sign a memorandum of agreement with the Massachusetts Department of Public Works pursuant to Mass General Laws, Chapter 90.
Second.
You've heard the motion read as in Article 4. Is there any discussion? Michael?
Mike Cahill, North Street. I'm going to ask my perennial question of our infamous DPW director. Phil, could you just share with us what streets you've got earmarked for improvement?
And just so you know, Chapter 90 is like our highway money from the state.
So we already submitted the paperwork for
Phil, can you put that closer to you?
We've already submitted the paperwork for approval, and we've been approved for Old Stage Road for 700 feet, Dwight Street, complete, mill and pave, and Main Street from the intersection of Maple to approximately, I forgot the address, but like a little bit south of the sewer treatment plant. So those are the 3 streets we're approved for.
Okay, any other discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed, nay. Motion carries.
Mr. Moderator,
Mr. Jaworski.
I move that we postpone indefinitely the following articles. Articles 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 28, 29, 30, 31, 33, 34, and 35.
Second.
I've given them the okay this year to take, because of this money issue Darrell spoke about, anything that has to do with a spending article except for CPA, that's a whole separate account. Anything to do with a budget-related article that we have to come back once free cash is certified to deal with. So all of these items will have to be dealt with at a special town meeting in the next few weeks. We have to, or we can't operate as a town. So you've heard those items being tabled. When an item is tabled, there is...
I need his list, because he did it a little differently than we discussed.
Okay, you need his
I need
list?
the list.
Okay, she's going to need the list that you did.
Can I give it to you later, or do you need it?
No, I'm going to copy it.
All right.
And is there any discussion on those?
I'm going to have to refer to it.
Is there any discussion on those? If it's tabled?
No.
Okay, so all those in favor of tabling? Absolutely. All those in favor of tabling Article 5, you can mark them off in your paper if you want, 6, 7, 8, 9, and 10. So 5 through 10, 28, 29, 30, 31, 33, 34, and 35. Those are all items that would, well, I think Article 35 is the budget, but all the other ones come out of the budget. And we can't spend money that we're not authorized to spend at this moment. All those in favor of tabling those articles signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed, nay. Motion carries. Article 11, on this next article, we're taking no action at this time. This is with legal advice, so please take up Article 12.
Mr. Moderator,
Mr. Moriarty.
I move we take up Article 12.
Articles made and seconded to take up Article 12 is in your handout.
Pilot, we do.
Mr. Moderator,
Mr. Moriarty.
I move that the town vote to authorize the Board of Selectmen or any other municipal board to enter into a payment in lieu of taxes agreement, also known as a pilot, with Select Energy Development, LLC, with respect to its operation of a solar electric generating facility on town-owned property at 34 School Street.
You've heard Article 12 as read. Is there any discussion? Michael.
Mike Cahill, North Street. Just a quick question. Does anyone at this point know what the revenue stream coming from this pilot is as has been drafted at this point?
The proposal for
Yeah.
yes.
Okay,
So
could you
this
share
is
that
about a solar project that's going to be on the roof here at Smith Academy for the townspeople that aren't aware of it. We're looking to enter into a 20-year agreement to reduce the costs of electricity here at Smith Academy. So Mike just asked a question about the pilot. The pilot's going to be year one, it's a 20-year lease. It's going to be approximately $4,000 and then decrease over the 20 years. But it's about the savings in electricity to the school. We're going to be locked in at 9.5 cents. So the first year we anticipate saving roughly $12,000, but over the 20-year span we're looking to save, as costs go up of electricity, we will remain locked in at 9.5 cents. The anticipated savings is about $500,000 over 20 years. So that's more than you asked for, but I figured people might not know that we were getting ready to get into this solar project on Smith Academy. So.
Any other discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, nay. Motion carries.
Mr. Moderator.
Ms. Doty.
Mr. Moderator, I move that the town vote to authorize the Board of Selectmen to enter into a 10-year contract.
Cindy, you got to make a motion to take up the article.
Yes, I do.
You,
Mr. Moderator, I move that we take up Article 13.
Second.
Second. Thank
okay,
you.
motion's been made and seconded to take up Article 13 is in your handout.
So now, Mr. Moderator, I move that the town vote to authorize the Board of Selectmen to enter into a 10-year contract commencing on July 1st, 2020, with a qualified vendor selected by the Mass DEP through a competitive bid process for recycling processing services for the town, subject to the Board of Selectmen's determination that the contract is in the best interests of the town and subject to town meeting approval in the spring of 2020 for funding those services.
Second.
You've heard the motion in Article 13 is read. Is there any discussion? Michael.
Yes. Who is our current vendor? And the assumption is, if this is effective July 1st, 2020, that the contract that we have with our current vendor will expire at that point in time?
Phil?
Yeah, Phil.
Phil, do you want to take that? Oh, Sharon? Oh, Marlene.
The current contract for recycling services is with the Springfield.
Marlene, can you talk a little louder?
Sure. Is with the Springfield Mass Recycling, Springfield MRF. And yes, you are correct. The current contract will expire next year.
Any other discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, nay. Motion carries.
Mr. Moderator,
Mr. Jaworski.
I move we take up Article 14.
Second.
Motion's been made and seconded to take up Article 14 is in your handout.
I move that the town vote to accept the provisions of Massachusetts General Laws, Chapter 200A, at Section 9A, thereby allowing the town to adopt a policy in accordance with the Town of Hatfield Financial Policy Manual to outline the requirements of the treasurer for managing uncashed checks.
Second.
You've heard the motion in Article 14 as read. Is there any discussion? All those signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, nay. Motion carries.
Mr. Moderator,
Mr. Moriarty.
I move we take up Article 15.
Second. Motion's been made and seconded to take up Article 15 in your handout.
Mr. Moderator,
Mr. Moriarty.
I move that the town vote to accept the provisions of Mass General Laws, Chapter 40, Section 8J, for the purpose of establishing a municipal commission on disability, excuse me.
You've heard Article 15 as read. Is there any discussion? All those signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, nay. Motion carries. I just want to make a quick comment on that one now that it's passed. Back in 96, 97, I was on to write the first ADA program of the town. And it's all about reasonable accommodation, and it works in both ways. If someone coming to a town meeting, special, annual, or another meeting, and you have an accommodation that you would like to have addressed, whether a sign language person or an interpreter, try to let Lydia know with as much advance notice as you can so that she can try to accommodate it. Because at the last minute, under certain very strict laws, you'd almost have to cancel the whole meeting to accommodate somebody. So maybe this group will come up with some rules that she can be fair to everybody on all sides for. So just a little aside on this item. Thank you. 16.
Mr. Moderator,
Ms. Doty.
I move that we take up Article 16.
Second.
Motion's made and seconded to take up Article 16 is in your handout.
I move that the town vote to accept Massachusetts General Laws, Chapter 32B, Section 20, to create a trust fund for other post-employment benefits, OPEB, in accordance with Governmental Accounting Standard Board's requirements.
Second.
You've heard Article 16 as read. Is there any discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, nay. Motion carries.
Mr. Moderator,
Mr. Jaworski.
I move we take up Article 17.
Second.
You've heard Article 17 seconded.
Shall the town, in addition to the payment of 50% of a premium for contributory group life and health insurance for employees in the service of the town and their dependents, pay a subsidiary or additional rate?
Second.
You've heard Article 17 as read. Is there any discussion? Ma'am. And when you come up, just state your name and the street you live on. We don't need your house number, but just so people know what part of town you're from.
Amy Hudzik, Primrose Path. I would like to amend the article. I'd like to change it to see if the town shall vote in addition to the payment of 50% of a premium for contributory group life and health insurance for employees in the service of the town and their dependents, pay a subsidiary or additional rate by accepting the provisions of Chapter 32B, Section 7A.
Okay, and you need to bring that up. And
Can I ask, so basically, all you're really doing is adding the language by accepting the provisions of Chapter 32B, Section 7A. Everything else is exactly the same, right? So do you want to change that to just by adding, and then we're just adding a few?
Mhm.
Is that-
you can put to change it just by adding, right?
Or we can just substitute. You can do it either way. It doesn't matter. So we'll just. So you're moving to see if the town will vote. Okay. So what she's doing is she's substituting Article 17 with a new wording, which basically is adding to the end of the wording you have in front of you, by accepting the provisions of Chapter 32B, Section 7A, which is the chapter and verse that relates to the additional benefits. It allows the selectmen have no authority to add anything to our health insurance, only up to 50% under the law, the bylaws that are the statutes that we've already accepted. So they can't go over 50%. If we vote to accept Chapter 32B, Section 7A, then the selectmen have the authority to go over 50% and add that to the insurance. It doesn't say they will go over 50%, but at least it gives them the authority to do 51%, 52%. Right now, they have no authority. This is what gives them the authority.
I just second the amendment.
That's what I was going to do.
Okay.
Okay. All right. So the new article, or the new motion is to see if the town shall vote, in addition to the payment of 50% of a premium for contributory group life and health insurance for employees in the service of the town and their dependents, pay a subsidiary or additional rate by accepting the provisions of Chapter 32B, Section 7A.
Boy, I'm sure glad she explained it. Okay, now we're voting on the motion.
We're voting
On the amendment.
on the amendment.
On the amendment. Is there any other discussion on that amendment?
Hi, my name is Christine Jones Monahan. I live over on North Street. And I just wanted to add, in case folks didn't know, with the changes to the wording and everything, that 50% is really the legal minimum that you can offer your town employees for health insurance. And we are all alone in that if you look around the area. So I'd just like us to keep that in mind. We have amazing folks who work here in Hatfield. I speak from the perspective of our town employees who work at the schools, where their burden for health insurance is extremely high. Family often paying $900 out of their paycheck to pay for their family plan of health insurance, and it is a real impediment to keeping our great employees here. So please consider that. If you look all around us, the next lowest is 60%, but most folks are 75, 80% for health insurance, just for some context. Thank you so much.
Okay. Any other discussion?
Kim McGovern, Main Street. I'm just curious in terms of the health insurance, changing that. Would that mean that all dependents would be covered at the same rate as the employee? Or would there be a two-tiered rate? I don't know how it is now. Can somebody answer that?
Does anybody know? Sharon? Edwina?
Everyone on a plan is covered equally.
So the town contributes the same amount for my spouse if I were an employee as it would for me as an employee?
50%.
Okay,
Yep.
Thank you.
Any other discussion? Okay. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed, nay? Motion carries.
That's the amendment. Now we have to vote the article.
Now we're back to the original article. So the original article is, shall the town, in addition to the payment of 50% of...
Now it's,
Why don't you want to read it off?
yeah, so we passed the amendment to change it to what I read. Now we're voting that article,
The article itself.
okay?
So that's part of the article.
Right.
Okay.
Yeah, it's now part of the
Okay.
the additional
So-
language is now part of the article, so now we got to vote the article as amended.
Okay. So all those in favor of Article 17 signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed, nay. Article passes. I want to just point out that I've been doing this for 17 years now, and a little while before I became moderator, towns used to let moderators be in on the insurance program. I missed it by that much. Go ahead.
Mr. Moderator.
Mr.
Moriarty.
Moriarty, there you go. I keep thinking Sherlock Holmes,
I
I'm
know,
sorry.
that's okay. I've been called worse. Mr. Moderator.
Mr. Moriarty.
I move that we take up Article 18.
Motion's been second?
Okay.
Motion's been made and seconded to take up Article 18 is in your handout.
Yeah, Mr. Moderator.
Mr. Moriarty.
I move that the town vote to amend Article 16, Department Revolving Funds, Section 5, Chart of the Town of Hatfield Bylaws, pursuant to Massachusetts General Laws, Chapter 44, Section 53E.5, to add a tax title revolving fund. Such fund to be credited with any fees, charges, or other receipts from the departmental programs or activities supported by the revolving fund, or take any action relative thereto.
You've heard Article 8, the motion Article 18 as read. Is there any discussion? Michael?
Quick question. So I'm assuming that we've been paying for these expenses, the tax title expenses, out of our normal operating budget since whenever. Is that correct?
Tax title hadn't been done in this town for years.
Okay, but
So we
Okay.
are limited to where we're at. To the next step for all of the tax titles needs to be funded. So this is taking money that people who do pay into tax title and leaving it there so you can spend it to go after more tax title money.
okay, but the tax title effort this year for fiscal 19 has been coming out of the fiscal 19.
Exactly. But we had
Collector
to
and
stop,
treasurer's
we
budget.
had to stop going any further because we ran out
Because
of
you
money.
didn't have the money. Okay. And that's my next question. Is the $25,000 enough?
Well,
to
so
do
it won't
this.
be 25,000. That's the maximum you can keep in that account. So it depends on how much money we bring in, how much money can stay there. So there is money on the regular budget when we do get to that at a different date. This is a revolving fund that says that if we bring in tax title money, we can leave it in the tax title account versus dropping it back into the general fund.
Any other discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, nay. Motion carries.
Mr. Moderator,
Ms. Doty.
I move that we take up Article 19.
Second.
Motion's been made and seconded to take up Article 19 is in your handout.
Mr. Moderator, I move that the town vote to amend Article 7, Section 7.03A of the Town of Hatfield Bylaws by adding the underlined text below and deleting the text marked with the strike-throughs as follows. Section 7.03A, the tax collector or other municipal official responsible for records of all municipal taxes, assessments, betterments, and other municipal charges, hereinafter referred to as the tax collector, shall annually and may periodically furnish to each department, board, commission, or division, hereinafter referred to as the licensing authority, that issues licenses or permits, including renewals and transfers, a list of any person, corporation, or business enterprise, hereinafter referred to as the party, that has neglected or refused to pay any local taxes, fees, assessments, betterments, or other municipal charges, and that such party has not filed in good faith a pending application for an abatement of such tax or a pending petition before the appellate tax board.
Second.
So you've heard the details of Article 19. Is there any discussion? Michael?
Sharon, could you explain to us why you need to have these changes made?
So this is just another way to try to get people to pay, is that if I can only give the list once a year, you're restricted to being able to say, especially the building inspector, listen, they shouldn't get a permit because they're behind on their taxes. So this bylaw, just change in the wording, just lets us so that we can say to him, since we're now doing tax title currently, we can do it regularly, we can provide him the list regularly also.
Is there any other discussion?
Can I just say one thing? I just have a question. Do we need to change the wording because the office is now a combined office, tax collector, treasurer, or treasurer, tax collector? However we changed it? Or is it because it says tax collector or other municipal official responsible for the records of all?
Yeah. Yeah. My understanding was because it said municipal office responsible. So it covered
okay.
all of it.
Okay.
Joe, I didn't,
Okay.
You're okay with that?
Yep.
Okay.
Joe, I just had a question, not so much on the article, but I thought, and maybe I misunderstood, when we changed the bylaw, it was a 3/5 vote, or is that only related to planning part of the bylaw?
What was the question again?
I thought that we need not a simple majority to change the bylaw.
Just not,
No?
Yeah.
Simple majority?
yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Any other discussion on Article 19? All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed, nay. Motion carries. 20? Yeah, but you got to open it up.
Mr. Moderator,
Mr. Jaworski.
I move we take up Article 20.
Second.
Motion been made and seconded to take up Article 20, and I know Bob Wagner, who's working diligently on this.
Actually, I'm going to stand to move that we table this article tonight. Upon further review of this bylaw, which we've worked on for many months with Pioneer Valley Planning Commission, upon further review by town council and then consulting to zoning experts here in the state, there's a few issues in here that we would like to revisit, and we would like to bring back before town meeting at a future date.
Okay.
Probably not by the meeting in June, but we would like to bring it back at a future date. So at the moment, we'd like to table this article.
So therefore, I move to table.
Therefore, I move to table this article.
We don't need a vote to table it. Okay.
Yeah,
We-
well,
You need a motion, you need a vote to table it.
No, we're just,
Or do we withdraw the original
Yeah.
motion?
You need a vote to table it?
yeah.
Okay.
That's what he's saying.
All those in favor of tabling this motion as Bob has requested signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed, nay. Motion carries. And I just want to remind you that when we do take this up, I am not going to ask anybody to read 22 pages to put you all to sleep. So as you watch them on, certainly they are always on their YouTube videos, as you learn more about this article, please be cognizant. So when the time comes, we're going to take it probably 3 or 4 pages at a time and give you a few minutes, like the budget, to look through it. Otherwise, you'd all be sleeping. I can't be that cruel. Okay.
So, Mr. Moderator,
Mr. Moriarty.
I move we take up Article 21.
Seconded. Selectman, second.
Second.
Motions are made and seconded to take up Article 21 is in your handout. And again, I'm going to ask, out of respect, that they don't have to read every line there. So if you take a minute and go through it, and we can open it for discussion.
And we're on page 22.
If Bob, if you, we're on Article 20, page 22 in the motions, Article 21.
So, Bob Wagner, Chair of the Planning Board. So while people are reading through this, actually quite a few of this, so this is a housekeeping item, if you will. The state has made some changes in its floodplain overlay district ordinance or laws, and also, and there's been some changes in FEMA regarding floodplain boundaries and floodway maps. And so the state got in touch, they're getting in touch with communities all over this Commonwealth to have them update their floodplain overlay districts to conform with current state law. So that's the gist of this particular bylaw. It doesn't make any major changes to our floodplain overlay district as it currently sits in our bylaws, but updates it to reflect current law here in the state of Massachusetts at the state level. In the course of doing this, we discovered that there were a number of just organizational issues in this particular bylaw in terms of, for example, Section 2.4, number 1. After 2.41 purposes, we noticed that in our bylaw, all of those other items were not distinguished by 2.42, 2.43, that kind of thing. So there's additional house cleaning here that's really just editing for the most part. So this, if you have very, very detailed questions about this, it's going to be very difficult for me to answer because it gets into much broader state law, and but suffice it to say, it doesn't make any substantial changes to what we currently have in terms of the way this would affect anyone within the floodplain district or the floodplain as overlay district as we currently have it mapped.
Thank you, Bob. Is there any?
I haven't read the motion yet.
Okay, I'm sorry.
That's all right. I just
got to
wanted
go
to-
through the motion.
Yep.
Go for it.
All right, Mr. Moderator.
Mr. Moriarty.
I move that the town vote to amend Section 2.4 floodplain overlay district of the town of Hatfield zoning bylaws as recommended and voted by the planning board on April 17, 2019, pursuant to what Bob just said.
Okay, and I see right at the end it says what to strike in there. Is there any other discussion on this? This has to be a 2/3, so we're looking for a majority here. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed, nay? Motion carries. Just an aside for a lot of new people, many years ago when I first started doing this, I thought my first year I'm just going to have people say yes and no. It was that simple. And after the first vote, I realized my mistake that our forefathers certainly practiced. When you say yes and no, the sound up here from the volume of people is very different than A and nay, which is very much grammatically the same sound, so you can certainly judge. So that was one of my mistakes long ago, and I'm sharing it for someday when somebody becomes a moderator. Remember that. I'm not leaving. I hope. Okay, 22.
Mr. Moderator.
Ms. Doty.
Mr. Moderator, I move that we take up Article 22.
Second.
Motions are made and seconded to take up Article 22 is in your handout. And again, Cindy, I'm going to ask if you don't have to read the whole thing, but is there, I think, Bob, you might want to explain a little bit about it?
Yeah, so actually either Lydia or Marlene can help me. I believe it was in 2014. the town adopted this amendment to our bylaws to allow for priority development sites, which again was an effort on the part of the state in moving forward major projects within the state and in communities within the state that might involve state grants for water lines, sewer lines, things of that sort, that there be the opportunity for expedited permitting on some of these major projects. When I say expedited permitting, this doesn't mean that they just skate through and they don't get reviewed by the planning board, board of health, and other departments in town, fire department, police chief if appropriate. But if indeed there are, once a special permit is granted and then there happen to be changes in the project as a result of maybe how much money the town got in a state grant, or some conditions that occur after the special permit is granted, there's an opportunity for expediting those changes without having to basically start all over again or come back to the planning board. And so this outlines, as you can see, insubstantial changes, substantial changes, those kinds of things that would fall under this particular bylaw. We adopted this in 2014. As I understand it, there were some problems with the text at the time that only came to light when we applied for a grant recently. For some state funding. And in response to the grant request being declined, the state outlined that we needed to amend our priority development site bylaw to better conform with the state expectations and the state law. So that's what this does. So in some respects, it is a housekeeping item.
Okay, thank you, Bob. Any questions, any discussion?
Could I make a comment?
Sure.
Mr. Moderator? So as Bob alluded to, after we applied for the grant on Route 5 last year, which we unfortunately did not receive, to expand the sewer service.
Can you talk closer to the mic?
Yeah. We had applied for a grant last year to extend sewer service on Route 5, and we did not receive that grant, but it was suggested by the state that we reapply this coming year, which we plan on doing. But when we met with the state officials who came out and met with Marlene and myself and Phil back a few weeks ago, they had given us some recommendations as to what we might want to do to enhance our application as we get ready to submit it to them. This article to enter into and accept Chapter 43D was at the top of their list that they said the town of Hatfield should absolutely approve this and make sure that we indicate that on our next application to the state for that $1.5 million on Route 5.
Okay. Any other discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed, nay. Motion carries.
Mr. Moderator,
Mr. Jaworski.
I move we take up Article 23.
Second.
Motion's been made and seconded to take up Article 23, and unless you want to read every single page in this, you certainly can, but I think if people go through their handout, we take a few minutes, and Bob can do some explaining.
So in addition to the text that's in your warrant articles, there's also a one-page fact sheet that I hope everyone picked up that describes in quick summary what the planning board is proposing here. Many of you may remember about 3 years ago, the town, with the help of a terrific steering select committee, produced a housing production plan with Pioneer Valley Planning Commission outlining housing needs in town and then recommendations to address those housing needs, particularly to enhance and increase the diversity of housing options here in Hatfield. And one of those recommendations was to add to our bylaws the opportunity for accessory apartments. And you can see in the purposes that the idea here is to provide the opportunity for a homeowner to add an accessory apartment either within an existing home or attached to an existing home. There's limits on the size of what that accessory apartment could be, particularly if it's attached to an existing home. These are to be owner-occupied, so these are apartments within an owner-occupied residential unit. And the hope here is that these accessory apartments, in Hawaii, they're known as ohanas. They may be called an in-law apartment, but the opportunity here is for a family perhaps to provide independent living, no more than 2 bedrooms, for, say, a senior member in the household, or a caregiver for a senior member living in the main dwelling, a bounce-back child, which is more common now today, or to provide the opportunity for affordable rental unit for someone here in the community, which would also provide revenue for the person living in the primary home. So we hope that this will be supported tonight. Again, it's an opportunity to diversify the housing options in town, and in some cases to provide for much needed assistance for those of us, and those of us, myself included, in the community that may at some point see the need for having an apartment for a caregiver, or for a child that's moving back into the community, or to move into so that your child can take over the main house. So, thank you.
Okay, any other discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed, nay. Motion carries. The only problem you made, Bob, is we didn't want to hear about our kids moving back home. I saw a lot of smiles and shaking heads on that, so please, next time, keep that out. Okay.
Mr. Moderator,
Mr. Moriarty.
I move we take up Article 24.
Second.
Motion's been made and seconded to take up Article 24 is in your handout.
Mr. Moderator,
Mr. Moriarty.
I move that the town vote to appropriate or reserve from community preservation annual revenues in the amount recommended by the Community Preservation Committee for committee administrative expenses, community preservation projects, and other expenses in fiscal year 2020, with each item to be considered a separate appropriation. Want me to read them?
Sure.
Okay. Appropriations from fiscal year 2020 estimated revenues for committee administrative expenses, said funds to be expended under the direction of the Community Preservation Committee, $8,250. From reserves, from fiscal year 2020 estimated revenues for Historic Resources Reserve, $19,600. From fiscal year 2020 estimated revenues for Community Housing Reserve, $19,600. From fiscal year 2020 estimated revenues for Open Space Reserve, $19,600. And from fiscal year 2020 estimated reserves for budgeted reserve, $128,950.
Wherever you said reserves, it needs to be revenue.
You said reserves and it's revenues.
Reserves at the top.
No.
Yeah, but down here I didn't say revenues?
No. No. But you just,
We
I
can
think
play
you
the
can
tape.
just shortcut
Nope.
it and say, please correct my English.
Under reserves, there's 4 items there we'd like to, from fiscal year 2020, estimated revenues for Historic Resources, Community Housing, Open Space Reserve, $19,600 each, and from fiscal year 2020, estimated revenues for budgeted reserve, $128,950. Thank you, Lydia.
Her job is to keep us absolutely legal.
Yes, it is.
Okay,
Second.
you've heard Article 24 as read. Is there any discussion? Michael.
I'd like to ask Bob, again, these perennial questions. So what is the estimated revenues for the community preservation function within the community for fiscal 20? And then could you also give us what the before and after balances will be for the next several articles if we vote them?
And just remember, CPA monies is not part of the operating budget. This is totally separate.
Okay, so I'll answer the first half of Michael's question. I'm going to ask John Wilkes, our treasurer, to answer the second one. So last year we received roughly $110,000 in local receipts. Actually, I take that back. We received about approximately $135,000 in local receipts, and then we received a match from the state. The budget that you have before you is an estimate of how much, so if you were to add up all these numbers, the 19,600 times 3, the 8,250, and the 128,950, all of that together is what we expect to raise in our local community preservation funds, as well as what we then expect the state match to be. So the state match combined with our local receipts comes up to that total amount. And that's what we anticipate adding to our funds for next year. Yeah, approximately $200,000. So in terms of what our current balances are for then expending the funding that's being considered in Article 25 and 26, John.
John Wilkes, North Hatfield, West Street. We just got these figures yesterday afternoon from the accountant. So we've had a struggle, a real struggle, getting balances, getting up-to-date information from the accounting and the treasuring office and the finance committee and the selectmen. We've asked constantly for 2 years to give us an update. We finally got something yesterday. We're comfortable with it, but we still would like to work with the finance committee, the selectmen, the treasurer, and the accountant to get some accurate records into this fund. It's supposed to be a dedicated fund by itself, and the 9 members of the committee are not comfortable with the town's, records. But we're going to accept what we got yesterday afternoon at 3 o'clock. So Marlene's worked very hard with us to try to get information, but we don't want to lie to the town, or we do have some problems with the accounting. All right. Mike, to answer your questions, right now we got a total of $857,796 in fund balances that are unencumbered. Of that, $597,616 is undesignated, $409,408 historical reserve, open space is $14,619, and the community housing is $196,153. In addition to the total of $857,796, the town of Hatfield still owes the Community Preservation Fund $46,000 for a transfer that was made 3 or 4 years ago. It was a clerical error, we've been told. But it's $46,000. It's appeared twice on the town meeting warrant, but it was tabled both times. We'd like to see that money restored back to the Community Preservation Fund. And that's about all we can tell you right now.
Okay. Michael?
All right, just kind of, I'm going to try to sum up and just general. So we've got close to $900,000 total in all of these funds. Unencumbered, okay, which means that we haven't voted to use any of those funds. And we're kind of getting into the next couple of articles. But after we consider the next 2 articles, we're still going to have a significant amount of money that's unencumbered. So are there plans to use that money? I know we've got some issues with the community housing reserve, where there's an expectation that we should spend that on the part of the state. So could you guys share that?
Well, I just say one thing. I know Bob can elaborate, but we can only act on what's presented, or what we say, proposals are given to the committee. The committee just screens the proposals. They can come from anywhere. They can come from any department. They can come from private citizens. As long as they meet the criteria of the Community Preservation Fund, we'll go through it and review it. And then the ones that get past our muster will come here before the town meeting for the final decision. Bob?
Yeah, so to Mike's point, we have there's no reason for us to squirrel away this money or to hold it. We'd like to use it, and we'd like to spend it. And to that point, if you look in the handout that we provided tonight as an update on our activity, since 2008, we've raised close to $1.4 million from our local collections and have gotten close to $1.2 million from the state trust fund, an 86% state match. We are spending this money. Through May 2018, we've spent $1.8 million on 32 projects, and so we've done a lot of work with this. But we do have this money, and as John points out, we can only react to applications. I suspect, though, that we're going to see some. We're hoping that we can do some community housing projects as we move forward on the recommendations of the housing production plan. I know there's some issues over at the dam, at the Mill River Dam, and there's some potential other projects that may be coming down the pike. We're going to be voting on the pavilion. Our hope is that that's going to be enough money for the pavilion. There could be other issues or other opportunities related to public parks in town. So our hope is that we will see more proposals.
Thank you.
Just one other thing I'd like to say. Once you receive a grant, it's not yours forever. If you don't use it, we've been adding language to our articles that give you a time deadline to get the project done. We have a couple right now in a situation where the timelines are coming up, and we'll find out if they're going to use their money or it's going to come back to the fund. So,
thank you. Any other discussion on Article 24? All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed, nay. Article passes.
Mr. Moderator.
Ms. Doty.
Mr. Moderator, move that we take up Article 25.
Motion's been made and seconded to take up Article 25 is in your handout.
Mr. Moderator, I
Ms.
move that the town vote to appropriate the sum of $60,000 from the Community Preservation Budgeted Reserve Account to create a public pavilion at Smith Academy Park at the corner of School Street and Main Street under the direction of the Hatfield Open Space Committee. Said funds to be expended under the direction of the Community Preservation Committee.
Second.
Motion been made and seconded, as you heard. Is there any discussion? Yes, sir.
Richard Abbott, Elm Street. Excuse me. Also a member of the Open Space Committee. I'd like to address Article 25 and 27. They're both related to the pavilion funding.
Let's see, 25. You can take 25 now, and we'll do 27 when it comes up.
Okay, why don't I just come back in 27 then?
Okay, thank you.
Well, I will adjust 25. So for those of you who know, the park renovations, the landscape renovations were completed just about a year or so ago today. In the middle of that park, there's a nice concrete platform where a pavilion is pegged to go. We had a designer come in during the summer. We had a series of meetings. We had some good public discussions, several meetings back in the fall. And those of you who voted last November would have had the opportunity to, participate in a poll of choosing which design was chosen. And so I will say that if you add up the totals of Article 60 and Article 27, they're more than what the projected cost of the pavilion is. This will give us some leeway in terms of if the bids come over a little bit higher than expected.
Thank you. Is there any other discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed, nay. Motion carries.
Mr. Moderator.
Mr. Jaworski.
I move we take up Article 26.
Second.
Motion's been made and seconded to take up Article 26 is in your handout.
I move that the town vote to appropriate from the Community Preservation Historic Resources Reserve account the sum of up to $30,000 to be used to preserve, restore, and rehabilitate the roadway and pathways in the historic Main Street Cemetery on Billings Way in accordance with the guidelines set forth for such activity and the preservation guidelines for municipally owned historic burial grounds and cemeteries. Third edition, 2009, issued by the Massachusetts Department of Conservation and Recreation under the direction of the Hatfield Cemetery Commission, said funds to be expended under the direction of the Community Preservation Committee.
Second.
You've heard Article 26 read and seconded. Is there any discussion? Bob?
Bob Flaherty, Primrose Path, also a member of the Cemetery Commission.
You talk a little louder, Bob?
Sure.
Okay.
I move to amend the motion under Article 26 to see if the town will vote to appropriate from Transfer Community Preservation Historic Reserves account the sum of $16,000 to be used to preserve, restore, and rehabilitate the roadway and pathways want me to read the whole article? The only change there is striking 30,000 and lowering it to 16,000.
Okay, and do you want to say why, or is there?
So in working with the CPC, we found that there was a couple of other guidelines that we had to follow. We weren't allowed to do regular millings or pavings to the cemetery, so that also lowered the cost. We're going to do regular millings onto the ground, and also working with the DPW director and the guys from the DPW, they're going to take on some of the work and also help us purchasing some of the goods at a bulk rate, which has also brought the cost down. So we were able to save about $14,000 to complete this project.
Thank
I
you.
need that in writing and signed. Thank you. Did your homework. Thank you.
Bob's on the Cemetery Commission, but thank you, Phil.
Okay, so he's amending it. Yep. So he's amending, the amendment is just to change the 30,000 to 16,000. All the rest remains the same.
Okay, so on the amendment, all those in, any discussion? Any discussion? Bob?
So I'm going to just, first of all, the Community Preservation Committee is fine with this. We became aware of what Bob just told you after we submitted the article, and I'll defer to the town council just so everyone knows, per the CPA Act, and this may be the case in other matters as well, an amendment can be presented to reduce an amount that's presented in the warrant, but you can't submit, so anyone out there, you can't submit an amendment to increase the amount that the CPC committee has recommended. So in this case, we are fine with it because if indeed we were to allocate the full 30 and you came in at 16,000, which is great, we would have to have another vote to return the 14,000 to the historic reserves. So we're sort of skipping and saving ourselves a step by doing this. And thank you to the to the Cemetery Commission and to the DPW for working on getting the price down.
Thank you. And as a hold harmless, I'm on the Cemetery Commission, but I have no opinion and I'm up here as moderator, so I'm not saying anything. But I wish the Finance Committee could pick up what you said. You can't increase it. Okay, on the amendment, is there any other discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed, nay? The amendment carries. Now we're back to Article 24.
26.
26. All those in favor, is there any other discussion at this point? All those in favor of Article 26 signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed, nay? Article carries.
Mr. Moderator.
Mr. Moriarty.
I move we take up Article 27.
Second.
Motion is made and seconded to take up Article 27 is in your handout.
Mr. Moderator.
Mr. Moriarty.
I move that the town vote to appropriate the sum of $55,438 and to meet said appropriation, authorize the treasurer with the approval of the Board of Selectmen to borrow pursuant to Mass General Law, Chapter 44, Section 8C, the sum of $96,438, total project costs, less $40,504 contribution from community preservation, the amount of $55,934. And further, authorize the town to enter into any contracts in anticipation of applying for $55,934 state funding reimbursement from a Parkland Acquisitions and Renovations for Communities grant program for the construction of a pavilion in Smith Academy Park for purposes under Mass General Law, Chapter 45, Section 3.
So you've heard Article 27 as read. Is there any discussion?
Just want to add to a little bit to what I previously said. In terms of time frame, if this article is approved, if the grant is awarded to us, the town would know sometime in November, December. The plan would then be to go out for construction bids in the winter. We cannot spend this money until July 1st of 2020, and hopefully we'd be breaking ground for the pavilion soon thereafter. It should only be a month or so of construction, and then we'd have it available for public use sometime through the end of next summer, 2020.
We thought it would be ready for Memorial Day.
Town council has a question.
So Bob, he had a question on Article 25 and 27. There's a 60,000 and a
I'm
55,000.
surprised Mike didn't catch this. So there is a, there's a,
Wake
Boom.
up, Mike.
there, yeah, so there is approximately a $20,000 difference between what the CPC is recommended to be allocated for the pavilion and the $40,500 listed here. Rich alluded to this when he was talking about Article 25. The reason that they came to us for $60,000 and then it says $40,000 here is that in the event that, for example, the state doesn't give us the full park grant, we don't get the full amount that we're hoping for, then that money would make up that difference. Or if the bids do come in higher than they were anticipating of $96,438, we would have some extra money in CPC. As I mentioned earlier, if not all the money is used, it goes back. We vote to send it back to the fund from which it came. So the CPA fund doesn't lose that money. It's not like it goes into the general fund or just gets spent on a big party after the pavilion is built. It will go back to the budgeted reserve where it came from in Article 25. So that's to give us that leeway, that opportunity.
Okay. As long as these guys are happy, I'm happy. Any other discussion? Yes, Louise. Louise, you're back.
Louise is back.
Louise Slish, Elm Street. Just a quick question to Lydia or the council. For the borrowing portion of this, it's still a simple majority? The borrowing is historically
It's going to be
was a
two-thirds.
Thank you.
She caught you too. Okay. Any other discussion on Article? Oh, Michael.
One other question. In this motion, it says to raise and appropriate, and then it also says in here that we would take available funds, appropriate by taxation. Now, we have in all of the other articles tonight that involve raising and appropriating and monies from taxation, we have tabled those articles. So
No, and to meet said appropriation by having the treasurer borrow.
yes, I know there's borrowing
Okay.
in here, which is, you know, and what I'm wondering about is whether we should strike the words raise and appropriate and strike the word taxation out of this motion.
It has to be
Where
appropriated.
does it say taxation?
If I could,
Wait a minute, Michael, she's trying to see where it says taxation.
Yeah, I don't see taxation.
This is Article 27, Michael.
if I may add, the state has very specific requirements in terms of this article. Ideally, the state awards a grant and the town then votes to approve, to accept it. But because of the timing, the grant award is in November, December. Absent a special town meeting, we couldn't do that. I know Marlene
Well,
is...
Richard, they're not arguing about the article. It was just the wording of raise.
Right.
And Michael, I think, is correcting himself that it's...
Yeah, I was looking at the warrant.
Right.
Warrant language.
See, so the warrant comes out a week or two earlier, and that's what you see is what the guidelines
not
we're going to
talking about
follow. When the motion comes out, that's the official document in the back that has numbers and prices attached to it. So he was reading the warrant, which is different than the motion. The motion is what you see the night of town meeting.
So I withdraw my concern.
Okay. Ooh, that's two. Okay. Any other discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, nay. Motion carries. We're up to 32.
Mr. Moderator,
Ms. Doty.
Mr. Moderator, I move that we take up Article 32.
Second.
Motion is made and seconded to take up Article 32 is in your handout.
Mr. Moderator, I move that the town vote to set the spending limits for the revolving funds under Massachusetts General Laws 44, Section 53E and 1/2 for the fiscal year beginning July 1st, 2019 as follows.
And Cindy, you don't have to read the
Okay,
graph.
which include in your handout the following: community gardens, DPW, greater hazardous materials, and tax title for a total spending authorized of $55,000.
Okay. You've heard Article 32 read and seconded. Is there any discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed, nay. Article passes.
Mr. Moderator,
Mr. Jaworski.
I move we take up Article 36.
Motion been made and seconded to take up Articles 36 is in your handout.
I move that the town vote to hear any and all reports which have to do with the welfare of the town.
Motion been made and seconded as in your handout on Article 36. I would, does anyone have any discussion?
I didn't get to mention this when we were talking about Chapter 90, Phil. I know that there's always roads talked about, but I wonder if Phil would consider some of the project work to include guardrails and safety things, such as on Upper Main Street.
Okay. Is there any other comments to make? They couldn't hear you. He was asking if Chapter 90 funds could be used to fixing guardrails and other things with the towns and the roads around. And this is a point when somebody can make a comment. It's not that it's going to be answered or moved on. But I would like to take a moment and I like to always ask for a moment of silence. I think of those now serving, excuse me, go ahead.
Just a plea. We definitely need people back here in June to take up these budget articles. We have some unpaid bills from prior fiscal years that have to be dealt with, and we have some, the budget itself, which we will not be able to operate beyond July 1 without. So we really need people to come back.
Marlene, is it safe to say that we're looking at June 25th tentatively?
Or earlier.
Or earlier, so it'll be posted on the website and advertised, so just keep your eyes peeled.
And will it be like on the calendar on the website? Where on the
Yes,
website? So people.
on the calendar, on the front page.
Okay. So please watch for it because it's the schools, it's every department, it's. Yeah.
There's, and this is just regarding communication that Joe spoke of earlier. We're redesigning the website. We have been forced to upgrade the website. But within that upgrade, there's a thing called, it was e-communications or something like that, and it's a section where you can go to the website, and we haven't finalized all of it, but you can go to the website, you can register your email address, so that anytime I send out an email announcement regarding something like town meeting, it will automatically go to your email because you registered your email on the website. And all I have to do is type one email. I don't have to put in everybody's addresses. I just shoot out one email and it just goes to whoever's registered. And you can register for different things. Town meeting, things having to do with Board of Health, things having to do, so you can select what you want to be notified about.
And please check your spam filters because it can go in there and you can say, I never got it, but you've got to go in your spam and say.
It's coming from SZYCH. A lot of times that goes into spam.
Okay. Kathy, did you have a question? Okay, you're fine with that. So I always like to ask for a moment of silence because we have those serving in our military. Hope they return home safely. For our aging and since passed veterans, it gave so much. We are all here safely today because of their commitment and sacrifice. And let's never forget to thank all of our public safety members for their sacrifice and willingness to protect us. So if we just take a moment for that. Thank you. And remember, voting is Tuesday, May 21st. Please vote. It is so important. And the Memorial Day celebration is on Sunday, May 26th, starting with the parade at 12:30. And I believe there's a barbecue held at the pavilion just past the elementary school. It's a great time for everybody. So thank you for coming, and I hereby dissolve this meeting.
Good job.